Hey everybody, Attorney Somm here. Welcome back. In this video, I'm reviewing the 2012 vintage of Dom Perignon, which has finally been trickling out in the United States market. Of course, with Dom Perignon, they only release vintage champagne. They most recently declared a vintage in 2010, and so they skipped the 2011 vintage. The reason that Dom Perignon has just released the 2012, even though it's 2022, is because the champagne always undergoes extensive aging at the winery before it's bottled and released. In fact, it ages for a minimum of 8 years before it's released, sometimes a little bit longer. During this aging process, the champagne develops what is called autolytic flavors and aromas. By autolytic flavors and aromas, I mean notes in descriptors such as toast, bread, brioche, and nuts like almonds or hazelnuts. The goal for Dom Perignon each vintage is to express both the character of the vintage as well as the Dom Perignon character and house style. 2012 is a highly acclaimed vintage in Champagne. Dom Perignon has compared it to outstanding vintages such as 1990 and 2008, both of which are some of my favorites. There were some complications, however. In 2012, February was very cold, but then that was followed up by a warm March. The problem with the early budding is that if there's cold weather later, there could be substantial frost damage, and that's exactly what happened in 2012. There was a very wet, cold April and early part of May that resulted in extensive frost damage and also mildew, both of which substantially reduced the yields for 2012. Now, while this vintage started off rather poorly, by late July and August, there was an extended period of sunny, warm weather that actually helped the fruit to ripen and turn the vintage around. Better still, the evenings were cool. Cold nights with warmer days helps to preserve acidity in the fruit. So the result was intense, concentrated fruit with ample acidity. The only problem is there just wasn't very much of it due to all the crops that were lost earlier in the vintage. Champagne can be made from 3 different grapes: Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Pinot Meunier, either individually or in any combination. Dom only uses Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and they typically do so in approximately equal percentages. This 2012, for example, is 51% Pinot Noir and 49% Chardonnay. In contrast, the 2010 vintage featured about 54% Chardonnay and 46% Pinot Noir. So given the strength of Pinot Noir in the 2012 vintage, they bumped up the Pinot percentage about 5% compared to the most recent release. I'm definitely a person who prefers their Dom Perignon with extensive bottle age following release. Nevertheless, I was interested in reviewing this wine to get an early read on it, and so I took one for the team and opened a bottle last night. This one has the expected autolytic notes due to the extended aging, and so the inevitable brioche and toast and nutty aromas and flavors were present. I also detected gunflint, mandarin orange, apple, pear, white flowers, white pepper, apricot, ginger, and many more. It's already a very complex wine. On the palate, this wine was dense, concentrated, and powerful. There was a racy acidity, which I really enjoyed, but the wine is slightly austere at the moment. If I had to compare this release to another Dom Perignon vintage from the last 10 or 15 years, it seems to resemble the 2003. The 2003 featured racy acidity as well. This 2012 has fruit that's a bit more generous than that 2003. Nevertheless, this one does have substantial room to improve with age, and so I'd recommend putting it away for at least 5 years or more. If you're going to be enjoying one from the last 4 or 5 releases, I definitely recommend enjoying the 2009 early. The 2009 is definitely more generous than many of the recent releases, and is also one that probably doesn't have as much room to improve with aging as the 08, the 10, and this 2012. The prices for the 2012 Dom Perignon vary widely. In the United States, I've seen lows around $190 a bottle, and I've also seen it selling for $240 a bottle or more. So it definitely pays to shop around for this one. Due to the fact that there were lower yields and the fact that it's a highly acclaimed vintage, this is definitely one that could go quickly. And so if you're interested in buying it, it probably makes sense to do so sooner rather than later. If you enjoy Dom Perignon, I definitely recommend buying this wine. I think this will ultimately be an excellent Dom Perignon, much like the 1990 and the 2008 vintages. However, I do think it will take an extended period of time with additional bottle aging for it to reach those heights. And if you're still trying to decide whether to buy the 2010 vintage of Dom Perignon, please be sure to check out this video where I review the 2010 vintage.